And we're speaking with Robert Greenwald, founder of Brave New Films and producer of the brand new film, Koch Brothers Exposed, which is having its Madison premiere, in fact, its Wisconsin premiere, Thursday and Friday of this week, April 26th and 27th at the Barrymore Theater, 2090 Atwood Avenue. Let me start right at the very beginning. Robert Greenwald, Koch Brothers Exposed is the title of the film. Who are the Koch brothers?
Well, how many hours do you have? The Koch brothers are two billionaires whose father left them a lot of money, whose father was a member of a John Birch Society, and who have an extreme right-wing ideology that they're willing to spend literally hundreds of millions of dollars in order to convince people of their ideology, of their politics, and of the way they look at the world.
Now, you talked a little bit about the money part of it, the huge sums of money, but what is the influence of the Koch brothers? What are the areas in which they are particularly influential, and how much money are we talking about in these cases?
Well, as we detailed, and we spent a year researching, investigating the Koch brothers for the film, they give in a multiple of different areas. They give millions and millions to fund ideas. Now you say, why are ideas important? Well, there's a great quote from David Koch in which he said, and this is from years ago, he said, politicians are like actors. They read from a script. And what I, David Koch, want to do is write that script. Now, I profoundly disagree with them on everything that they advocate, but as an overall worldview, I think that's very smart. And so they fund think tanks to fund the ideas. Then they fund so-called grassroots groups like Americans for Progress to fund activism. They fund teachers. They fund conferences with judges. They fund people who go on the talk shows. And finally, they fund elected officials. So it's a full spectrum funding. And in the film, you'll see not just about numbers, but you'll see the personal stories of people's lives who are affected and impacted by their ideology.
Now, I mean, maybe this sounds like a silly question, but why this film? Why not, organize a legislative campaign or a boycott or something like that? Why make a film?
Well, there are many ways to create social change, and one of the most important ways, as we've seen with the Tea Party, as we've seen with the Occupy folks, as we've seen with the Arab Spring over and over again, is explaining to people, telling narrative stories how the world works. And we've seen it in our other films. We did Outfoxed, we did Wal Mart, we did Rethink Afghanistan, we did Sick for Profit. And in film after film and story after story, and with social media, they're even more important, people communicate to their friends, to their relatives, to their colleagues, hey, look at this video, look at this clip, look at this movie, which explains to me how these Koch brothers are literally, not figuratively, attempting to buy democracy. To me, that's very important. Then from that can come the legislation. But if you look at how social change comes about, it never comes about with an exclusive focus on legislation. Civil rights, women's movement, peace movement, labor movement, they all were broad-based social movements with moral stories to talk about.
What sort of reception has this film been getting? I know it just came out. In fact, as we noted, the Wisconsin premiere of this film, Koch Brothers Exposed, is April 26th and 27th here at the Barrymore Theater in Madison. But you've had house parties. People have been showing this film. There's a trailer up on the internet at kochbrothersexposed.com. What kind of reception has this film been getting so far?
Well, the response has been very strong, and we know it's particularly strong not just from the thousands of people who are getting the video and screening it around the country, not just from the tens of thousands who are on Facebook or the website, but we particularly know it's strong because of the attacks from the Koch brothers. So it's a real sign that they understand the impact of film, and this film particularly, and it's a real sign that the stories we're telling. There's a very powerful story in the film about a community in North Carolina where their Americans for Prosperity literally works to resegregate the schools. There's an incredibly powerful story in the film about a small community where the residents talk about the fact they're getting cancer and plead with the Kochs to stop the Georgia Pacific plan. There's a section in the film with an interview with the gentleman who got Scott Walker on the phone and pranked him about their influence in Wisconsin, and it goes on and on.
The film has a lot of interviews with people that will be well known to the WORT listening audience, people like Bernie Sanders, like Jim Hightower, like Van Jones, who was just here a couple of weeks ago. It also includes a few folks from Madison, John Nichols of the Capital Times and The Nation magazine, and Lisa Graves of the Center for Media and Democracy. They've been doing quite a bit of work with their ALEC Exposed website to expose the American Legislative Exchange Council, which is Koch Brothers funded, and they've been having quite a bit of impact with that work as well recently.
Yes, Lisa and her folks have done an extraordinary job on calling people's attention to ALEC, on helping them connect the dots, on the role ALEC is playing in many campaigns, and we focus on it, particularly the Kochs, ALEC, and voter suppression, which is one of the truly most disgusting things that ALEC is part of, denying people the right to vote. And I salute Lisa for everything she's done in that work.
We're speaking with Robert Greenwald, the founder of Brave New Films, bravenewfilms.org on the web, and also the producer of this brand new film, the Koch Brothers Exposed, which is also on the web, kochbrothersexposed.com. And Robert Greenwald, let me just wrap up and sort of ask about you and why this sort of film work. Why not rest on your laurels? You've produced other films. You've worked in television. Why this kind of documentary, and especially these particular sorts of films, like your work on Afghanistan, like your work on the media with Outfoxed?
Well, I find that the skill set that I developed over years of working in commercial film and television was the ability to tell stories. To take that ability and to bring it to the most important issues of the day is an extraordinary opportunity. And then the fact that there are, thousands and hundreds and tens of thousands of people around the country like you and your listeners who take the film and then do something with it, who host a screening. I just got an email about someone who's screening it in 5 libraries in her community. Someone is screening it at a bowling alley. Somebody is projecting it at the side of a building that the Kochs are in. That so far exceeds, from my point of view, any kind of gratification or satisfaction you might have from working in commercial film and television. And then you see social change, with Afghanistan, again, with the help of many groups and stations around the country, we help change the way people think about it, or Fox or Wal Mart.
And that, I guess, is my final question. You've had some success with these films with getting the word out. People are more aware of what Fox News is about. People are more understanding of what the U.S. policy in Afghanistan means to the people on the ground in that country. What do you hope with this film, Koch Brothers Exposed, what do you hope this film will do for people?
Well, I hope that people will, again, most importantly, do something, whether you have a minute a day, an hour a day, 5 hours a day. There's something that everyone can do. And what I hope the film will do will shine a bright light on the Kochs, but even more importantly, shine a bright light on what's going on with these billionaires and others. They're not the only ones trying to buy democracy. These members of the 1% who use their money, use their power, and use their access to oppress the other 99%. And for people to understand that these brothers and others are using and abusing capitalism in the worst kind of ways, and that it's very important that people speak up loud and clear, expose them, and fight back. And there are victories. Florida State University, the students there organized and said the university should not be taking the Koch money with strings attached. The resegregation battle was turned around in North Carolina. So they have a lot of money, they have a lot of power, but I believe we have we have the truth on our side, and we have people whose lives are hurt and affected by their ideology and their dollars.
And what about the politicians who accept money from the Koch brothers and Koch organizations, who take this legislation that's authored by think tanks like ALEC and then pass it? Will they learn something from this film?
Well, politicians who are on the take probably know that they're on the take, and I don't know that they'll learn something. But I think we can expose them. I think we can put their feet to the fire, and we can make very clear that with taking this Koch money comes a price that they're going to pay for following the Koch ideology, for following the Koch platforms, and for attempting to implement legislation and laws that have a horrific effect on people all around the country.
Robert Greenwald, founder of Brave New Films, bravenewfilms.org on the web, and Koch Brothers Exposed, the brand new film premiering here in Wisconsin, a state that has been much influenced by Koch Brothers money, and that premiere at the Barrymore Theater Thursday, April 26th, and Friday, April 27th, 7:30 p.m. Lots of guest speakers will be introducing that film, including John Nichols of The Nation magazine and the Capital Times, Lisa Graves of the Center for Media and Democracy, and Representative Mark Pocan, who has followed ALEC for many, many years. Robert Greenwald, thank you so much for speaking with us here on WORT.
My pleasure, and thanks for the great work you and your listeners are doing.
You just heard an interview with filmmaker Robert Greenwald that I did on Friday of last week. The film coming to Madison this coming Thursday and Friday, and very pleased to have with us here on the phone just for a few minutes, but available to talk about the film, is Jesse Lava, who's the campaign director with the Koch Brothers Exposed project, working out of Big Noise Films in Los Angeles. Jesse Lava, thank you so much for joining us here on WORT.
Glad to be here.
Now, this film premiered, I guess, worldwide pretty recently, mostly distributing it through house parties. The Madison showing is kind of unique because we have some speakers introducing the film and talking about the effects, particularly on Wisconsin, of ALEC, a Koch Brothers funded organization. How has this film been received so far around the country as you've been promoting it and getting the word out?
Wonderfully. We actually just had a big story in Rolling Stone over the weekend that people can check out. I think the main thing is that the Koch brothers prefer to work in the shadows. They prefer to work without sunlight. It's much more effective in buying democracy when nobody knows that you're doing it. That's sort of the nature of it. And this film really has been putting some sunlight on them, and it's putting the heat on them. They actually, they've been taking out Google ads against our film. They've been sending off kind of menacing letters from their attorneys trying to intimidate us and intimidate anyone who would dare report on the film. But that's a good sign. That means they're scared of the impact that we're having.
Now, that Rolling Stone article is available on your website, KochBrothersExposed.com, along with a lot of other information. One thing I thought was interesting is the 10 shocking facts about the Kochs that you have on here. And one of them is that the Koch brothers' combined fortune is roughly $50 billion, which is exceeded only in the United States by Bill Gates. I guess it's exceeded by Carlos Slim, perhaps, in Mexico. But the Koch brothers' combined fortune, what do they use this money for?
Well, their largestas, they basically bankroll the conservative movement in the United States. And one of the things they do in bankrolling the conservative movement is they create an echo chamber. So they send millions of dollars to think tanks like the Cato Institute, Heritage Foundation, etc., to come up with conservative policies. Then pundits and media figures regurgitate what those think tanks say, not just on Fox News, which we all know about, but everywhere. And then the Kochs donate to politicians who try to put those policies into practice. So you've got a lot of people regurgitating a lot of misinformation. And is it any surprise that we don't have a climate change bill when you have all sorts of misinformation being spread about climate change from the right? Is it any wonder that you have politicians saying that Social Security is going bankrupt when in fact it has a $2.5 trillion surplus? This is the effect of what their money does.
And it's not just about information either. The Koch brothers themselves actively participate in funding or anti-funding of politicians. You note on this list that they pledged to donate $60 million to defeat President Obama in 2012. They've also, I think it's David Koch, has personally given a very large seven-figure sum of money to the campaign for Scott Walker's fight against the recall here in Wisconsin.
Sure. And, they actually are the oil and gas industries, because, Koch Industries does oil, gas, paper products. It's a big conglomerate. But they are the oil and gas industry's single biggest donor to the House Energy and Commerce Committee, which does environmental regulations. So a lot of times they like to brag, what we're doing is following the law on the environment. Of course, they don't mention that they pay off the House Energy and Commerce Committee to make sure the law is to their liking.
Now, one of the things I thought was kind of interesting is that the Koch fortune apparently has its origins in engineering contracts with Joseph Stalin's Soviet Union, and yet the Koch brothers' father was one of the founding members of the John Birch Society.
Right, and Fred Koch, the dad, left them $300 million, which it kind of belies this idea of the self-made man who's somehow gotten rich because he's providing such valuable things to society. They got rich because their daddy gave them the money, and their daddy also gave them a right-wing ideology, a conspiratorial bent, such as was found in the John Birch Society, and Charles and David Koch are certainly living up to their father's legacy.
So, but the thing that I was thinking was particularly interesting is that here you have an ultra right-wing ideology, and yet they're making their money off of dealing with a communist government.
Sure. Well, money doesn't really know ideology. They can say that they're against communism and so on, but if there's money to be made, they'll probably go and make it. We saw that with Dick Cheney, who, when he was with Halliburton, did business with Iran and corrupt regimes that, as vice presidents, he said were the devil incarnate and so on.
Of course, there's a wonderful photograph of Donald Rumsfeld shaking hands with Saddam Hussein, similarly later a target of U.S. policy. So it seems like governments in general play both sides in these situations, at least, shall we say, unaccountable governments. And that, I guess, is part of what you're trying to do with this film, Koch Brothers Exposed, is bring to light some of this sort of otherwise unknown backroom dealings. Tell us about how Brave New Films got started on this project, the Koch brothers, and what kind of work it took to put together this feature film.
Sure. Well, Jane Mayer, a New Yorker writer, had a wonderful piece in the New Yorker magazine a couple of years ago that really sort of shined a light on what these two guys were doing. And Robert Greenwald, the director here, thought we really need to make sure more Americans see this, not just the readers of the New Yorker. So over the last year and a half, there's been a lot of investigating, and our film has a combination of our own investigations and those of wonderful progressive organizations such as Think Progress and Alternet. All this is kind of being put together into this film so that Americans are armed with greater understanding of how their democracy is being taken from them. And our sense is that when Americans understand that, then they can begin to fight to get it back. This public understanding is really the first step, and that's why we got involved.
Another side project of Brave New Films that's kind of interesting was the work that you did on the Social Security issue. And I remember you had the interview on the web, at least with Bernie Sanders on that whole issue, and some of that comes into this film as well. What are some of the different issues that the Koch brothers' fingers are in?
Sure, there are a lot. You mentioned worker rights, and that manifested in Scott Walker, where Americans for Prosperity, which is a group that the Kochs fund and founded, they were, helping Scott Walker lead this effort to undermine collective bargaining rights of public employees there. In addition, there are a whole bunch of other things. There's the resegregation of public schools in a North Carolina school district. Americans for Prosperity, again, was supporting this effort. This county in North Carolina had a wonderful model of integration of public schools, but opponents were trying to end it. They used code words from the George Wallace era, like forced busing and neighborhood schools, which basically meant white kids go to school with white kids and black kids go to school with black kids. And Koch money through Americans for Prosperity was being funneled into this effort. And at first it won. There was a big school board election where the people against integration and for resegregation won, and they started turning the clock back on the civil rights that have taken so many decades to win. But then there was a major backlash, and those people got kicked out of office, and that demonstrates that there is the ability to defeat the Koch brothers. For all their billions, the 99%, if organized, can fight back.
And we've seen that recently with ALEC, the Koch-funded American Legislative Exchange Council, which has withdrawn its efforts in a number of different areas, including the issue of the Castle Doctrine, which, of course, resulted in the unfortunate deaths of both Trayvon Williams in Florida and also Bo Morrison here in Wisconsin. Trayvon Martin and Bo Williamson. There we go. And then the other one is the voter ID laws, which we've seen quite a bit of struggle over here in the state of Wisconsin as well.
Sure. I mean, ALEC has been pushing these onerous restrictions on voting, which disproportionately affect minorities, the young, the poor, the elderly, basically the people most likely to vote against a 1% agenda. And the reason that the Kochs and other corporations backing ALEC would come for voting rights is that makes it easier to take away other rights. And so, the politicians supporting these restrictions have been getting money from the Kochs, Scott Walker, but also Rick Perry, many others.
We're speaking with Jesse Lava, who's the campaign director for the film Koch Brothers Exposed. Just about another minute here to wrap up. The movie is going to be shown here in Madison this Thursday and Friday at the Barrymore Theater, 2090 Atwood Avenue. It's going to be introduced by a number of local speakers, including on Thursday both Lisa Graves of the Center for Media and Democracy and John Nichols of The Nation magazine and the Capital Times. Also, Wisconsin Representative Mark Pocan is going to be speaking, and he's been doing quite a bit of research into ALEC for many, many years, I think since like 1994 or something like that. So that's the Madison premiere. Where else around the country is this film going to be showing?
Oh, Lord, it's everywhere. I mean, it's in Los Angeles, it's in Texas, it's in Florida. There's one woman who's a volunteer who's hosting 5 screenings at a local library in a small town in Florida. And that's something that people can do in Madison as well. So there's going to be the screening in Madison, but people can hold their own home screenings. Like I said, public understanding is a first step to taking democracy back. And so if people want to participate in that, go to KochBrothersExposed.com, figure out how to hold a screening. It's all right there on the website, and you can kind of do your part to spread the word about how our democracy is being corrupted.
Great. Well, Jesse Lava of Brave New Films, based in Los Angeles, the wonderful outfit headed by Robert Greenwald that has produced films like Wal Mart, The High Cost of Low Price, and recent work on Afghanistan and Iraq and many other things, and now Koch Brothers Exposed, premiering in Wisconsin here on Thursday and Friday at the Barrymore Theater, 2090 Atwood Avenue. Jesse Lava, thank you so much for joining us today on A Public Affair.
Thank you.